Hi, I'm Alex Paulton. I'd like to welcome you to a special edition of Talking Timepieces, where I am very, very lucky to be with Tania Edwards of Collectability here in Manhattan. How's it going, Tania?
It's great, and I'm so glad that you could come and see this exhibition of the world's largest collection of Patek Philippe electronic clocks ever presented. And we're here in Analog Shift, who is partnering with us at Collectability to present this collection, and we're so thrilled that you're here in New York City to see it.
Me too. Well, because, a lot of people don't realize how innovative and how advanced Patek Philippe was in electronic timekeeping. And as I've always stressing to the audience how important timing is in everything. Even today with GPS, if we didn't know accurate timing, the civilization would fall apart. But we don't think about the wiring behind the wainscoting, as it were. Correct. And so I think it's so great to present to the team this wonderful exhibit. It really is great. And we've got some nice close-ups we're going to be showing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this, Tania?
With pleasure. So in 1948, Patek Philippe started its electronic division. Now, those two words, Patek Philippe Electronics, do not go together. We know Patek Philippe to be the world's finest maker of mechanical timepieces. But timing is all about accuracy. And when Quartz technology came along, in the late 1940s, early 50s, Patek was fascinated by it because it meant it could make the most accurate their clock timing systems even more accurate. And in fact, Patek made the first known quartz clock in 1952.
Well, you need precision to make precision. Unless the lines on your ruler are very close together and very exact, you can't have any precision.
Exactly, which is why quartz is such important technology for anyone to use. So Patek embraced quartz technology. It embraced electronics, it embraced atomic timing, it embraced all the new technology that was out there, and then it took it to another level. And the level that it took it to is seen here in this exhibition of some of the most extraordinary electronic clocks. And they were made for major institutions. And we're going to talk about some of them, but we have, in this exhibition, we have clocks that were made for the Swiss Parliament, for NASA, for nuclear power stations, for airports, for hospitals, anything where time is essential, that it must be accurate and it must be sustainable. Nothing can break. And so these systems are known as redundant systems, which means if something does break, the system doesn't break down. The system isn't reliant on each section, which is why these clocks are stacked mostly as towers, because each of the racks can be taken out. If something needs to be fixed in one of them, it can be taken out and it will not affect the timing of the clocks.
Well, what I find very interesting about this is the incredible sophistication represented in both product and reputation and clientele. Right. NASA with their Rubidom,
it's the most demanding clientele.
Exactly.
Not just anyone.
Exactly. Well, but when you think about it, the product line, like you're wearing a beautiful ellipse yourself.
Beautiful Patek watch, yes.
That it's so interesting that they are cutting edge electronically.
Yes.
And yet they manifest their product in the most traditional mechanical ways.
That's right, because all they were concerned about was accurate timekeeping. And a lot of, the whole quartz revolution or quartz crisis that we also know a quartz war between Switzerland and Japan. It's a little bit misunderstood, and we think that these clocks help explain it in a completely new way.
I agree.
Even for someone like myself who's worked with Patek, had the privilege of working with Patek for over 30 years, I've learned so many new aspects about how Patek embraced quartz technology. It was the leader in quartz technology. It invented some of the most important timing systems ever invented. And without the mastery of electronics that you see behind us here, we wouldn't have so many of the electronics we take for granted today, in our iPhone, for example, that we can look at it and tell the time.
Agreed.
But that system, which we know is a GPS system, during the 1960s, there was no such thing as that, and the only way that these clocks could be connected to a radio frequency, which came from an observatory, was by a system that Patek Philippe invented. Until that time, no clock could be connected to an observatory.
Very cool. Well, why don't we go through the pieces and show the audience some of the more interesting pieces you have here?
Certainly, I'd love to do that. In the early 1960s, Patek Philippe produced the first known electronic clocks. What you're looking at here is the oldest electronic clock that we have in this collection. It's a fully transistorized quartz clock. Never before had anything like this existed. And it was made especially for the Swiss shortwave service that later became the Swiss International Radio. So it was used for broadcasting, where timing is so essential to make sure that obviously all broadcasts run on time and that the time is given accurately, for example. Moving on from the clock that we just looked at, the Chronotome, this is the next generation of Chronotome, i.e. a fully portable transistorized quartz clock. And if you have a look at the casing of this, it's very thick, and it was made primarily for marine use. So it's completely waterproof, but it also controls the temperature, and that helps keep the temperature at a steady rate, which of course for quartz is absolutely essential to keep quartz running accurately. This clock is from the mid-1960s. So we saw the chronotomes, the two earlier chronotomes earlier, and the next stage that came in terms of quartz electronic timekeeping was when Patek Philippe invented what's called the RAP system, RHAP. And that meant basically that these clocks could connect to a radio frequency wave. And these radio frequency waves came from observatories that gave the most accurate time available on the planet. And so with this technology, it meant that clocks could work independently. They didn't need a power source. They could be battery operated and yet could still tell the most accurate time possible. And here we have an interesting wall clock, or a series of wall clocks. This one was made for Rolex, and what people don't appreciate is that Patek Philippe made timing systems for many of the world's most well-known Swiss watchmakers, because they could provide the most accurate time by using this RAP frequency that connected the timing system to the observatory in Neuchâtel, Switzerland in this instance. This wall clock would have run many smaller subsidiary clocks which sat on the desk, the workbenches of Rolex watchmakers, so that they could match the correct time when they were actually making the movements of each of the watches they were working on. As you can see, it has this beautiful green Rolex branded case, and this is a very rare sighting, the Rolex brand and the Patek Philippe signature on one clock. Something we don't see very often. But Patek also made, with this new Chronotome technology, clocks for the military and especially the Navy, because they could be so accurate, and they were very important on warships. And you can see here this very thick casing, which was really to keep a stable temperature inside, because, as I mentioned earlier, quartz really needs a stable temperature. But also it's waterproof, it's water resistant, and you can see this rubber band around the dial area to keep moisture and water out, which was obviously important for any ship. And this line here is they bought the clocks for the French naval ships. They were based in Marseille, and they bought all these clocks directly from Patek Philippe. This clock here is what's called a T3 master clock system. We regard it as the Mona Lisa of all electronic clocks. It was made in 1971 for the Swiss Parliament buildings, and at the time it was without question the most extraordinary piece of electronic engineering. The purpose of this clock is it is what's called a redundant timing system. And that means that it has 3 master clocks. And the purpose of these master clocks is that as long as 2 are saying the correct time, one can be redundant because you know that at least if 2 say the same time, it's saying the right time. So if one breaks down, as long as 2 are working, you've got the most accurate time. And what's interesting about these racks that we see here is that each one is independent. So if one breaks down for any reason, it can be pulled out to be fixed, and it will not affect the entire working of the clock system, the timing system. This is the largest known master time system. It has 22 racks, 11 on each side, and these are all operating these individual subsidiary clocks, which would have in their turn operated other clocks. So this system actually operated about 253 clocks, but it could be wired to run almost 6,000 clocks if needed. All of those clocks saying exactly the same time from this master clock system. So this is in our opinion, the second most important clock in this collection. It was made for a German broadcasting company, which operated internationally throughout the whole of Germany. We call it the Rundfunk Clock because of the company that it was made for. And it's another very large clock system. It also has the 3 master clocks, but one, you can't see the third one. It's hidden under the 5th rack here. But if we have a look at these wonderful, this is telling us the seconds in the voltage. And if we look here, we can see that we can actually put these to be as accurate as 1,000th of a second, should it be necessary. So we mentioned that Patek Philippe made these master clocks for all kinds of institutions and companies. One of the most exciting was for NASA. And interestingly, Patek Philippe timing systems launched many of the early space rockets many of the rockets into space in the late 1960s, 70s. And this particular clock that we're looking at is a Rubidom calibration clock, and it was used it's portable. This is the battery on this side. It's very heavy, particularly when the proper battery is in there. But it was taken to sites where they wanted to make sure that the timing was extremely accurate. So a launch pad, that kind of thing, to double check the timing of all the systems. This telequartz is the final generation of electronic clocks. So we move from the extremely large Swiss Parliament clock to this telequartz, which is 60 times smaller than the main master clocks that we can see in this exhibition. This was new technology. This was where miniaturization came in. Now we have our phones. Now we have watches that we can wear on our wrist that do exactly the same thing as this. But in the early 1990s, this was the state of the art for electronic and quartz timekeeping master clocks. This is a very unusual system made by Patek Philippe in 1983 for Halliburton. And it is basically it's a portable phone system, but it scrambles phone calls. It's a high security phone system. It would have been used by heads of state, heads of armies, or highly important individuals that needed to make top secret telephone calls that could not be recorded. And so what happened is the person would make the phone call, it would be recorded on this cassette tape. There's still a cassette tape in there, interestingly. And then later, but that would be scrambled. We've listened to that, and it's just a high-pitched sound. But that can be unscrambled by putting in the correct channels, the correct codes that would unscramble the phone call, so that it was recorded for posterity and could be listened to later in a secure environment.
So, that was a close-up look at some very interesting pieces within the Patek Philippe electronic history, as it were. Tania, thank you so much for taking us through it.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. We're thrilled that you were here.
I'm thrilled that I was here.
Exhibition.
Yes. And this is a short-term exhibition as well.
It's on until the end of August, and we encourage anyone who's in New York, please come to these offices here at Analog Shift and see the collection for yourself, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Well, the good thing is that we'll be posting this video before the end of the month, so there'll be at least time for anyone in the audience who's really interested in the New York area to be able to follow up on this.
This is the best news. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tania. And thank all of you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.